Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Sharma, and you are attending the webinar on using electronic identification, authentication, and trust services for business. We'll be waiting just an additional 1 minute to catch any stragglers coming on board, and then we'll start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we'll start now with regards to the webinar using electronic identification, authentication, and trust services for business. Yeah, my name is John Sharma. I'm chair of the European Association for E-Identity and Security, EMA, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. So a bit of housekeeping. First off, please bear in mind that you can enter any questions into the chat box, and we will endeavour to answer them towards the end of the webinar. Note that we will be answering the questions verbally, so we'll be able to share that. We hope we'll be able to answer everybody within the time limits that we have. Also, please bear in mind that this is not a technical seminar in detail, but rather talking about how you, the multipliers and the organization, membership organizations, will be able to, and service providers will be able to use tools for eIDAS deployments. So, yeah. So the agenda that we have today is this introduction, and then John Swithers from the Lisbon Council will introduce the eIDAS toolbox. Following that, he'll look at integration in the training programs and knowledge systems that they have available to help you with your members. After that, Luke Hendricks, who's Director of Enterprise Policy and External Relations of the European Association of Craft, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, will talk about reaching out to the SMEs and creating a network. And then we'll have the Q&A session at the end. We're planning to make the webinar about 1 hour long. So why do we really need trust services? Usually, trust services are used to answer 3 questions and to address 3 issues: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Fear of technology failure. That means basically, are your systems up to producing and handling digital transactions in a way that you can be sure that they will work, that you've got the right times, and your systems are working and you don't lose anything. Uncertainty over security. Are your systems secure? And are the transactions, more importantly, with regards to eIDAS, secure? Are you speaking to the right people, to the person that you think you are, etc.? And doubt over commercial governance. That's really how the counterparty, how the transaction is conducted, the sort of level playing field that you have. And those are the 3 points that trust services really address to an extent. All right. Sorry, I'm just, sorry. One of the things you've got to bear in mind is the questions asked a lot. Is eIDAS really just for governments? And the answer is there's actually no obligation for the private sector to adopt the EIDAS, but its use between counterparties, between the person doing the transaction and their counterparty, is really, the risk is really reduced by using this scheme. It's like EIDAS service is nothing more than a trust scheme between individuals, between governments, between organizations, between companies. And the idea is to level the playing field between the counterparties, so everybody knows and it's transparent what the other side is doing or talking. Another question asked is, why is it so complicated? Well, as you all know, of course, 27 plus member states, and each one has their own view on privacy, data protection, relationship between the citizen and the state. Every state is unique. And EIDAS is a regulation which applies to all the member states, but it's been designed to respect every state's preferences. So the idea is that every state's comfortable using EIDAS, and that's what's going to make it very successful. In this webinar, what we'll do is we'll be showing the EIDAS interactive tool and other material which is aimed at SMEs and on EIDAS and the trust services, and that will include things like infographics, videos, etc., etc. And really, we want to help you, the participants in this webinar, to share these resources with your contacts, with your members, and to communicate the benefits in a way that's relevant to the particular market that you're involved in. Right. So now I'd like to introduce John Smithers from the Lisbon Council to introduce the EIDAS toolbox. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, John, for the introduction. As John just mentioned, I work for the Lisbon Council for Economic Competitiveness and Social Renewal, which is a Brussels-based think tank and policy network. It's my job this morning to, well, this afternoon, I should say, is to introduce and present the work that's been developed to create the material for the EIDAS toolbox, which will be, we hope, the first step in promoting the use of electronic identification, EID, and trust services to the private sector, particularly amongst small and medium-sized companies in Europe. When I refer to, or when the study team refers to trust services, we do refer to those services that are covered by the EIDAS regulation itself, which would include e-signature, e-seal, e-timestamps, electronic registered delivery service or ERDS, and website authentication certificates. So, bear with me while I just try to, here we go. So, before I get started on presenting the actual material that is involved in the EIDAS toolbox, I want to give you a brief background as to where this initiative actually came from. So towards the end of last year, the European Commission, in collaboration with Deloitte, EMA and the Lisbon Council, embarked on a study to promote and support the uptake of EID and trust services amongst businesses in Europe. Now, the main objective of this study and the work we're currently doing is to create and run a pilot to promote EIDAS amongst SMEs in Europe, and focusing on 4 main sectors, such as the financial sector, the online retail sector, the professional services sector, and the transport sector. So prior to actually launching the pilot project, which we are doing now, we carried out a number of steps. For example, we made a market analysis where we analysed the current use and demand for EID and trust services amongst SMEs in Europe. We also tried to identify the role that these services could play in digitising the business processes for businesses. And also we've identified practical ways, or tried to identify practical ways of how to empower these SMEs with the knowledge and skills necessary to really take advantage of the opportunities that the EID and trust service solutions bring. And hence, that is what has been mirrored in the toolbox, which I will present to you later on in the webinar. And finally, we're also aiming to enhance cooperation amongst industry associations, and also encourage kind of the exchange of best practices of European SMEs on how they've implemented EID systems, or perhaps how they've implemented specific trust service solutions. So the work has been done and is continued to be carried out through a variety of different data collection activities. Now, these include desk research of the key documentation at EU and national level, strategic interviews with EU level stakeholders, interviews with key multipliers such as business associations, chambers of commerce and service providers. The study team also carried out a survey with representatives from SMEs throughout Europe to gauge the current awareness levels and then their actual needs and understanding of electronic ID and trust services. And finally, once we'd actually developed the EIDAS toolbox, so the material to generate awareness about EIDAS, we then held a stakeholder workshop where we could present the material that we'd developed and discuss ideas and improvements for this material with stakeholders. So, throughout the analysis carried out, the study team identified a number of benefits that the EID and trust services could bring to SMEs, so to the private sector, whereas the focus tends to be on their use in the public sector. So, these benefits include things like a less administrative burden when carrying out business transactions, more efficient business processes, and therefore, as a result, a reduction in business costs and a potential increase in profits. And finally, safer electronic transactions leading to increased consumer trust, for example, through the application of website authentication certificates. Now, these benefits, we tried to make them extremely clear in all of the material that we've generated for the EIDAS toolbox and that we're about to see, just with the aim of showing the SMEs the advantages of adopting such solutions in their day-to-day businesses. Okay. So you might be asking, okay, why are we here? So the aim, as John Schimmer actually mentioned, of this webinar is to really reach out to multipliers such as business associations, service providers, chambers of commerce. So those people who are kind of directly in contact with SMEs. So according to the annual report on European SMEs 2016-2017, SMEs represented 99.8% of all businesses in the non-financial business sector in the European Union. So due to this extremely large amount of SMEs in Europe, it's very difficult to effectively reach out and engage with them. Hence why we also want to get you, the multipliers, on board. So those people who are the closest to these SMEs and understand their needs within the individual countries where you are based. We also hope that by presenting you with this information and giving you a preview before it is actually launched to the public, that you can begin to use it and share it amongst your communities and networks. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the material involved in the EIDAS toolbox, so let's really jump in and see what's being created, and so you can see how you could possibly use it to the benefit of your organisations. So the EIDAS toolbox for SMEs is available online. It will be made available at the end of the month for the public, but we are giving you a preview today. And it will be available in 4 different languages, so in English, Spanish, French, and German. And there you have the URL where this will be based, where the documents will actually be hosted. So let's get started. So the main kind of structure where all of the information will be hosted will be the European Commission's Digital Single Market website. Now, on this website, there will be a section dedicated to the toolbox and the resources on eIDAS specifically for SMEs. There are 4 main pages. The first will provide an introduction to eIDAS. So what is the eIDAS regulation? It will also provide an introduction into what electronic identification actually is and means, and the different trust services covered by the eIDAS regulations and the benefits of such services for the private sector. There is also a Discover section where we go into detail on how SMEs can implement the eIDAS solution, so taking it one step further. And we do have a focus on different sectors here that have already been mentioned, such as the financial services sector, the transport sector, the online retail sector, and the professional services sector. We then have a Learn section with the objective of providing learning materials for SMEs and multipliers on eIDAS. And this includes a program of webinars, which I will show you later on, and supporting course material for each webinar. So this will be actually the first webinar in a program of 7 webinars covering the different eIDAS subjects. And finally, we have a test section. John Shamar actually mentioned earlier on in the webinar that the study team has developed an interactive tool whereby we hope that representatives of SMEs can kind of enter and play around with the different EID and trust service solutions in a simulated environment using practical real cases. But it gives them a chance to kind of become familiarized with what they may expect from this type of service and become accustomed with the different terminology, and also to try and reinforce the benefits of using such solutions. So all of the material we actually hosted throughout these different pages. However, we also hope that you, the multipliers and service providers, will share it with your communities. Hence why we've actually created a kind of a quick pack, an eIDAS pack, for you to easily download all the materials that I'll be mentioning now. On the screen at the moment, you can see the URL where you can download this information. This is actually available now, although it won't be available to the public until the end of September. Okay, let's jump into the eIDAS toolbox itself. So what does it actually contain? We discussed lots of materials. The toolbox itself actually contains materials such as infographics, videos, checklists, a guidebook on the basics of eIDAS, and an interactive tool, all with the aim of helping to inform European SMEs about EID and trust service solutions, and also to reinforce and communicate the benefits that they could bring to these businesses. Now, the materials aim to cover different learning needs, from generating general awareness about the eIDAS regulation and the specific solutions covered by the regulation, towards more kind of advanced knowledge needs regarding the application of these solutions into business processes in different sectors. So if we move on. So first up, the study team generated a news release with the idea that multipliers, so business associations and chambers of commerce, etc., and service providers can actually use this news release or press release on their website, highlighting the launch of the material available within their networks and encouraging the businesses within their communities to access and have a look at this material. So that's part of the material that we've created. Secondly, and these are by no means in order of importance, we've generated an introductory video on eIDAS, which provides an overview of the eIDAS regulation and goes into the benefits of using electronic identification and trust services for your business. And again, you have a list of the different solutions that are actually covered there briefly in the introductory video. It's a very short video, very visual, with the idea of communicating key messages in a very short amount of time, as we know that particularly representatives of SMEs have very little time available for this type of activity. Moving on. The study teams also developed a number of different infographics where we highlight both the overview of the different eIDAS solutions available and then sector-specific applications using a kind of user story of where in the business process each solution could be involved. So the first infographic that you have on your screen at the moment provides this overview of the different solutions. So for example, we have e-signature, qualified web authentication certificate, e-seal, etc. It provides you with a brief introduction or explanation of each solution, and then below in the different colored boxes, the different benefits that they can provide to the private sector. The study team then has developed infographics for each sector or focus sector for this study. So starting with the financial services sector, here we use the example of a company offering an asset portfolio management service to a customer and how they could use both EID, for example, electronic registered delivery services, e-seals and e-timestamps within that business process and the benefits that it could bring to their company. We then carry on again with another example for the transport sector, this time focusing on the case of a logistics company delivering goods cross-border in this case, so over two different countries, and where these solutions such as e-timestamps, e-seals, and other solutions can actually be included in this business process and the specific benefits for a business of this type in the transport sector. It's also important to know that all of these infographics are downloadable in PDF form, and so with the hope that they will be reused as training material, as learning material, or as in different events or presentations. We've also developed an infographic for the online retail sector, this time targeting a company, an online wine retailer who is selling their wine online to a customer in a different country. And it's very interesting the use of electronic identification here, as alcohol is a good which is restricted obviously for the age limit in different countries. So hereby the use of electronic identification here can prove that the user in a different country is who they say they are and that they actually are of age to buy alcohol. And finally, on the infographic side of things, we have developed an infographic for the professional services sector. This time using the example of a law firm, so a lawyer who is representing their client in the sale of a property in a different country, and how they can effectively use EID and trust service solutions in the sale in this process. I think it's important to note here, I do often mention cross-border examples. We've really focused on the cross-border examples simply because the actual, the use of eIDAS here is extremely good in these sort of examples where you're carrying out business transactions between countries. But all of the benefits mentioned are also very valid for transactions that are carried out within one country. And again, just want to emphasize that all of these are downloadable as PDF, both in the links that were provided earlier. So moving on. So another bit of material that's being created is the SME guidebook. So the eIDAS Made Easy guidebook. So the aim here was to generate in a small and easy to read document the main concepts regarding the eIDAS regulation, electronic identification, and trust services, and the key concepts that often arise. For example, what is the difference between qualified and non-qualified trust service providers, and what are the benefits of these services for small and medium-sized businesses. What sort of technology is involved in implementing these services? So it's a very quick start guide. I think it's just over 15 pages long, but very visual. And we also use these Get Practical boxes. If you look at the pink box on the side of your screen, where we give ideas of what the business is like before implementing certain eIDAS solutions, and then what it could be like afterwards, and the benefits that they can bring to the organization in that case. We also have Learn More boxes where we guide the user to other resources and information on eIDAS on the website that they can use should they require more information or more detailed information for the more advanced readers. Again, this will be downloadable on as PDF on the website. A checklist, an eIDAS checklist has been developed to help guide the business owner towards the correct solution or solutions for their business needs, according to their business needs. So you can see on the right, it's a downloadable PDF document again, and we start with a question about awareness. Does the user have any awareness about what eIDAS is? If not, we guide them to the appropriate material to give them that knowledge and generate that awareness about the basics of eIDAS. If they do have some knowledge, we then dig a bit deeper into their current business needs, and then move down, guiding them towards the appropriate solution or solutions for their specific business. After we've done that, we try to push them towards or lead them towards to testing the solutions, so they can get a bit of practical experience through our interactive tool, or guide them to the list of service providers that is available, where they can actually contract or hire these services and implement these services. Finally, sorry, I'm just moving on through, here we go. As you're all aware and participating right now, we've set up a program of webinars to cover main aspects and really to try and generate a discussion around different subjects. So today really is the introductory webinar where we present the tools and the materials that have been developed. But will progress. For example, we have a webinar next Thursday on the 13th of September where we'll focus on electronic identification and the specific business benefits for electronic identifications. We then move on to the focus on trust services on the 27th of September. And then we will hold 4 sector focus webinars discussing the concrete applications of eID and trust services in each sector, such as the financial, online retail, transport and professional services sector. It's important just to add that all of these webinars, the presentation and the recording of the webinar will be uploaded onto the website for people who perhaps couldn't make the actual live version, or just as a future learning resource should you need to use it. And just moving on, we've also developed a list of key events that may be of interest to you as a community or as service providers. Many of them you may already be aware of, but just to have kind of highlighted the key events related to the world of SMEs and also to the world of electronic identification and trust services. We will also be actively communicating around these different events and trying to generate awareness about the material that's being developed so that it can be shared at these events, presented at these events, and to guide those representatives of SMEs who are interested in the subject and think it could be of benefit to their business towards the appropriate material. Now, finally, it's been mentioned a few times throughout this presentation. We've developed an interactive tool, as I mentioned, whereby the user can actually go into this tool. They can choose which sector they're working in, or they can choose the specific solution they'd like to test, for example, an e-timestamp, and really experience a specific scenario where that solution could be applied. So the idea is to take specific real life use cases and guide the user through the process of what it may be like to implement this solution into their business process. At the end, we also try to emphasize the benefits of what they've been doing, of implementing this solution. And they are available to test the different solutions such as e-seals, e-signatures, etc. It is interactive, and so this tool actually will be available at the end of the month. It's currently being finalized and will be available on the website. So we encourage you and the businesses in your network to use it. So as I mentioned, just a brief summary. We have the different material that I've just presented, and we really are reaching out to you, the business organisations, service providers, and other different multipliers, to provide you with early access to this material, to have a look at the material, and to hopefully share and use the material. We just wanted to highlight again that this material won't be available to the public, so it won't actually go live for download on the EI-for-SME's website until the end of September, coinciding with the EI regulation on the 29th of September, when it will be obligatory for all countries to recognise those notified electronic identification schemes. So that is when it will be made public towards the end of the month. And again, I've just included there for you the URL where you can actually currently download the information as a preview. So now that we've discussed the different material available to you, we've been thinking, the study team has been developing different ways that this could actually be used by you, the multipliers, and shared with your different organisations in your communities and networks. Firstly, we really do encourage you to get involved and use the material that we've just explained as much as possible. Share it. You can use it as a learning material, but really get involved in this project and this pilot that we hope will be extremely successful. The first kind of example that we see is a potential use is to use this material in presentations at events related to SMEs or on EIDAS focused subjects. Please, use the infographics. You're more than welcome to use the video. It's all available online and for download. So please feel free to use this material. Secondly, we encourage you specifically to incorporate the material into any development or training programs that you may provide as a multiplier or as a business association. Please do incorporate. We notice a lot in the analysis that a lot of the training programs currently don't really have any EIDAS focused modules. So I think the webinars here, the recordings of the webinars could be of interest there. Again, the infographics, the use of the interactive tool, the SME guidebook could all come into play here and form part of these training and development programs. Finally, we do encourage you to use the material and kind of announce the availability of the material in your newsletters, on your websites through the press release that's been made available, or on social media channels using the different downloads that are available. And we do encourage you to kind of generate awareness and share this information if you see it of interest to the communities that you manage. So on that note, I'll just like to encourage you to again look at the material, and we really hope that you'll get involved with us and enjoy it and see it as useful for the businesses in your network. So thank you very much, and I'll now hand over to Luke Hendricks, who's the Director of Enterprise Policy and External Relations for the European Association of Craft, Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises, UEPME. So take it away, Luke.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. As John said, my name is Luc Hendricks, working for WAPME as EIDAS. It's also a terrible acronym, so nobody knows how to pronounce it. We are a Brussels-based organization, European SME employers organization. We represent over 12 million small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe, and our main task is to defend the interest towards the European institutions of small and medium-sized enterprises. And we are composed by national horizontal SME organizations, but also by European sectorial organizations. But I will come back on this. Maybe a first thing, if we are talking about reaching out to small and medium-sized enterprises, we have first to talk about the difficulties that we have to overcome when we try out to reach to small and medium-sized enterprises. First of all, there is the issue of EIDAS and all the other tools about the technicality that we have to overcome. Most of the entrepreneurs, they are good in what they are doing, but on IT stuff and so on, this is another problem. So we have to overcome the technicality, and this we hope that with the material that we have at our disposal now, that this will help. It's also a non-tangible issue. You have to know that most of the SMEs do not have a IT department or any other department. John mentioned it, 99.8% of all the enterprises in Europe are small and medium-sized enterprises, but you have to know that 93% of all the enterprises in Europe are micro enterprises, so enterprises with less than 10 employees, and even 50% of all the enterprises in Europe are one-person companies. So there you have already the problem that those people do not have much time. They are already working 65 hours a week. So if you communicate with them, you have to be very clear, very concise, and be very concrete. So the first thing is also when you are going to talk with them about EIDAS and so on, that they in the first instance, they do not feel concerned. They often do not see the relevance. So there is a huge task for the organizations, but also for the public authorities to show the relevance of those new tools. And in general, SME entrepreneurs are always quite suspicious towards new technological evolutions. As I also said, there is the diversity of all the different enterprises. For big enterprises, they are nearly all the same. But if you know that there are 22 million SMEs in Europe, they are all diverse and they have all their particularities. And you have to take into account when you are going to contact them. At the moment, and also with the package that we have available, this will improve. But so far, there is in most of the countries a lack of practical examples, or also of good functioning applications available. So this is also one of the burdens that we still have to deal with. And to be honest, we have also seen in the past, but also still actually, that in the different systems available in e-government by using e-identity card, that they are often system failures, and that they were at national level, especially that experience with e-government solutions. And you have to take this into account, because if you approach an entrepreneur or a citizen in general, and then he sees that it does not work, then it's lost time, and then it's very difficult to convince him to come back or to use this service again. So this is something that we surely have to take into consideration. So in any case, there is taken the fact that our SME entrepreneurs do not have the time, do not have the possibilities to dig into this file. They need to be encouraged to really grab the opportunities that those new tools are offering for them. Because in general, the small and medium-sized enterprises, especially in digitalization, they are already lacking behind in this field. No, I have a problem in going. Yes, there is my second, sorry, slide. So the question is how to reach our SMEs. First of all, I think it is a shared responsibility of, first of all, the public authorities, but because in a lot of the cases they are developing the e-government tools, but also our organizations, the intermediary professional organizations, be it horizontal or sectorial, but also commercial organizations like the banks who are also promoting this kind of tool. So first of all, a shared responsibility, but the business organizations, the professional organizations, they have a key role to play because they are the ones who are the closest to the small and medium-sized enterprises. So what do we need to do? First of all, we need awareness raising and capacity building in the SME organizations themselves, but also through the SME organizations or the sectorial organizations. So it has to start in the organizations themselves. So the issue of AIDAS need to be on every organization's agenda. Another thing is that we need a real need for mainstreaming. We have in this file really to include all the traditional enterprises. Jean made already a reference on it that it should not be only presented as an interesting tool for international active SMEs. I would even say it's the contrary. We should not focus at all on the cross-border aspects and the advantages for cross-border activities for SMEs of those tools. No, we have really to come up with the very simple, practical examples of B2B relations, because we can only come to a mainstream of the use of this kind of tools if we include the traditional enterprises. And another issue, and I made already a little bit a reference to it, we really have to look at the local and the national situation. We should not start to promote this kind of tools if the country is not ready, if the services are not functioning yet. As I already said, if you are going to promote something that is not really functioning, people are going to try it, it does not function, then you are going to lose them for quite a lot of time. So there you have really to look at the local situation, what is available and what is functioning. So of course you have to show the what can be useful for SMEs, how it can gain some efficiency, and you really have to work with concrete examples. And this is also, we are looking forward to the tool that will be developed, the test section in it, because this will be very useful for the small and medium-sized enterprises. And then, of course, we have also to look for an exchange of best practices and the practical applications. Then, the next slide on how to reach the SMEs. In general, and this is true for every information campaign, we need correct and objective information. I'm sorry to say so, but one should not be blind for the existing shortcomings, and they are shortcomings at the moment, especially at national level. There is still a major problem with some e-services, e-government services at national level. There are still some questions about privacy and security. we should not be blind for it. We should name it, and you have to be very objective there. It can also be a problem of card readers. They can be vulnerable for spyware. And also there, this is a problem for small and medium-sized enterprises. As I said, they are not technical skilled in choosing the right software or hardware. So also there is a role for the business organization to play their role as business advisors and help the SMEs in making the right choices. We have also to admit that with those new tools, for example, for e-identity card, there is some problem also for the recovery procedures of e-ID cards in case of loss, the theft, the defect, and so on. This takes more time than the previous paper versions. And there is the remaining problem that not all the trusted services are yet available in every country. So maybe speaking from our own experience to create a network of networks, the WAPME case, first of all, it was already a couple of years ago that we here at the Secretariat in Brussels, we identified the EIDAS as a relevant SME topic, working on it at European level. So we also identified it as a work item for the coming years, without knowing that some of our organizations were already working on it too. But if you work on it on at European level, slowly, we were informed that also some member organizations were also working on it. For example, we have at national level, we have, for example, the Chamber of Craft in München, which is already working on this very intensively, also developing tools on it. We are also on sectorial level. For example, we have also as one of our members, the European accountants also there, and it's one of the business services that have been taken as a good example. They are also working on it, on how to use the different tools in their professions. In general, we have, of course, informed our member organizations about the file and start to put it on our agenda. Also, our organizations will be informed about all the materials, and we have already also planned an information session for our horizontal and for our sectorial organizations in the near future. And then on my last slide, I think that apart from the work already done, there is a role also for the business organizations to continue to work on this file and to really engage in this file. I think that we first of all we have to ensure that EIDAS should be further developed in order to support government applications. This in the first place. Of course, also the private sector, commercial organizations should work on it, and there is also a role for our organizations to work together with them. We have, and maybe this will be a little bit shocking, but we have also to ensure that all the services should remain accessible without an eID, because you have to take into account not everybody yet in Europe has internet. And what if there is an electricity cut, when there is an internet cut? I mean, we have always to think about a plan B. It's important that not only the EIDAS tools are working, but also the different e-government services which are using the EIDAS, that they are well functioning, and because they are needed to have access. And this we see that in some member states this is really not functioning, and this has been a problem already in some countries. So those e-government services need to be available, accessible 24 hours a day. They need to be reliable. They should, in any case, deliver what they promise to do, because otherwise the people will not use it anymore. You need a help desk, a help function 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because entrepreneurs also work in the evening, in the weekend, and so the systems should continue to work. If there is a problem, there should be a help desk. And of course, the public authorities have to ensure 100% security, and it should not be vulnerable for spyware, privacy, and so on. So these are our main concern. I pass over now to John. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was very interesting. Thanks, John, as well. I do invite people to ask questions. We've only got a couple of questions at the moment come in, so please, we should be able to answer them all. The first question I have is, can you please send the correct link to the documents? So, John Swithers, have we got the links available for all the documents? John?
Hi there. Yeah, sorry, John. Yes, we will do that. We'll follow up in an email and provide the actual the correct links. Even though we'll provide those in a follow up in email. Yeah, apologies for that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So that's fine. Second question I have is, it's slightly technical, but I'll answer it anyway. It's with regards to an open banking startup in the UK, and they're thinking of becoming a qualified trusted service provider. As it's EIDAS is embraced by open banking ecosystem as it is at the moment. The question is it sensible to become a QTSP, a qualified trusted service provider now, providing things I would imagine like electronic signatures and other services initially, or not? I'll answer this one. And the answer is really, I would think that it's actually not cheap to become a QTSP, a qualified trusted service provider. As a small startup, what I would do as a good strategy is to build a relationship with an existing qualified trusted service provider in the EU, and then use that as an interim measure, use that as a stopgap. And then as your business settles down and you're concentrating on your own business goals, once that is settled down, then go for the certification. Like with certification of any standard, it's very distracting and it's quite intensive and quite expensive. So if you need additional information, I can provide you with the people that you need to do, but I'll leave that till offline. Thank you. So the next question we have is, sorry, just a second. Yep, I'm just trying to, a few more questions coming. Right. So does the SME campaign clearly explain that EIDAS does in no way make it mandatory for SMEs to use qualified electronic signatures for their business transactions? That is, i.e., that the basic electronic signature is recognized by EIDAS, but may not be denied legal effect. So I'll put that again through to John Swithers and ask him to comment on the content of the campaign. John?
Hi there, sorry about that. sorry about that. I was just in mute mode. So about the use of qualified and non-qualified. Yes, no, what we've done in the material that has been produced is just highlight the difference between the qualified and non-qualified trust service providers, and really what it means at legal level. In no way do we aim to push SMEs towards one or the other, but simply highlight the differences between the two. We're quite aware that also in some countries there actually are a limited or no qualified trust service providers. So that in that sense, we've just simply tried to provide the explanation about what each type means, and also the difference between the two of them.
Thank you. So next question is, will there be an initiative as part of this project in collaboration maybe with the multipliers and SME associations to measure the uptake of EIDAS overall and try and compile success stories so that they can be fed back into the communities and further provide proof that going down the EIDAS route is really good for you? John, again, I think.
Yes, that's a very good and actually very interesting question. Currently, obviously, we will be monitoring this as the project as we have it so far is actually a pilot project. We will be monitoring very closely the outreach initiatives and how successful they are. Also, the developing lots of contacts with SME associations, multipliers, service providers. And so we will actually be measuring to a certain extent the uptake, but that will obviously serve as a kind of a first step in what is going to be quite a long process of, as we've already mentioned in the presentation, these things really will take time, and it will take time to generate this awareness and encourage businesses to really uptake these solutions. But we are measuring it, and I'm sure that out of this pilot project there will be future initiatives to really strengthen the community and to share the new success stories that come into play. Actually, on the webinar program we have planned, we already have some practical examples from businesses and service providers, who are kind of either implemented or are using their own solutions in countries. So we can almost say kind of best practices. So please do join the later webinars for these practical examples, but we do hope that to have new success stories in the very near future.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Just to go a little bit further on that, there is a project called LEPS, L-E-P-S, which is designed for promoting the use of EIDAS in the private sector, and that's an EU CEF action, which is Connecting Europe Facility action, basically another EU project, and it's very worthwhile looking at that, and we'll send the link to that, but it's leps-project.eu, and that's for leveraging EID rather than all trust services in the private sector. I have another question, which is, can you please explain why trust service providers are separated and registered stroke notified by a member state and not at the EU level? The example given is DocuSign, which is a trusted service provider registered in France. How does that impact how it can be used in other member states or in cross-border transactions? I can answer that as well. The fact is that the whole purpose of the EIDAS is that it works across all the member states. So rather than have one huge global body which provide certification, there's a hierarchy, there's a structure going down, and if your application or your as a service provider, if as a service provider you are certified in one country in the EU by the certification body, then that is valid across all the member states. It's called subsidiarity, and it means basically that if it's good enough for one member state, it's good enough for all of them. Obviously, if it follows the structure that there is with regards to certification bodies, which have got a structure and a way of providing consistent certification across every member state. So the answer is, if it's registered as a TSP in France, it is good across all of the EU. Not outside the EU, of course, but for all of the EU. We'll be sending a link to this presentation, obviously, as well. We have two other questions at the moment. We have a question from with regards to how to deal with UK companies. Very interesting for that. The answer is I don't quite know yet, because it depends on how the separation between the EU and the UK occurs, but it's likely that there will be some mechanism for dealing with the UK put in place. EIDAS itself, after the separation in March next year, will not be will not be valid in the UK with regards to legal admissibility of EIDAS signatures in the UK. But on the other hand, if the UK companies have qualified signatures which are provided by qualified trusted service providers in the EU, then those signatures will be valid in the EU. But as it stands, EIDAS as a whole will not work in third-party countries, which is what the UK will be. It doesn't stop third-party countries like within the UK, companies within the UK or elsewhere outside of Europe, to certify and get qualified signatures. There are mechanisms being developed at the moment by the EU. There's a project called Future Trust, which is designed to build a mechanism where countries outside of the EU who aren't able to work within EIDAS can have interconnectivity, not merging, but interconnectivity with EIDAS scheme. And you can look at the futuretrust.eu website for that information, and we'll put the link, we'll distribute the link in that. Future Trust, by the way, also is developing a system called Go EIDAS, which will be ready late October, which is a very fast, easy way to connect up to EIDAS services. I think that answers that question, I hope. We have another question with regards to an EU project called Lightest, which is another Horizon 2020 project. Horizon 2020 is a research and innovation part of the EU. And Lightest provides, whilst it's similar to a Future Trust, it's more in a point-to-point situation, and it's not really geared too much for SMEs, but does enable organizations to trust a counterparty directly without actually having to, and it provides transparency of how organizations work and their governance. So again, we could put that list out, we could put a note to that project. Question, eHealth and EID, will there be an infographic? I'll put that to John Swithers.
Hi there. Yes, sorry, just to answer the question, as we said, it's a pilot study. We would love to cover all different sectors, but we have tried to include, especially in the interactive tool, just kind of more generic business processes where they can be introduced. But so as I said, this is the first step. At the moment, the answer would be no, we don't have an infographic on that, but we do hope to in the future to build up the database of infographics and extend it to other sectors. But meanwhile, we have included kind of more generic processes. So for example, on the interactive tool, you can actually test out the specific solutions themselves rather than go through a sector specific application. So that's the status right now. But again, it's a first step, and we do hope to extend this in the future.
Thank you. I'm just looking, there's one other question, which I'm not quite sure the best way of answering is, we are an SME providing software for the delivery business. How can we qualify our software for EIDAS? The question is exactly what your software does. For its EIDAS doesn't apply to the entire software, of course. It's for the particular functions that you have within the software with regards to trust services. So you would be able to say, right, we are using a qualified digital signatures, qualified delivery or company seal and timestamp, and all the other services that we've discussed. And those you would need to use qualified services, but from the software itself, because it covers a lot of more things other than trust services, then I don't think it can be qualified as a bundle of software. You can say that you're using EIDAS qualified services if you are, of course. I would suggest that you do look at speaking with a qualified service provider, a trusted service provider, a TSP in your member state, and see what they suggest. There are things like little EIDAS low compliance logos so that you can use on your software if you are using EIDAS services. So the answer is that some of the components within your software will be able to be EIDAS compliant, and you would have to get those from a qualified, a trusted service provider. But the software, and you can probably have a logo on that, which is, there's a standard logo, but your overall software can't be certified as compliant to EIDAS in general, because there are a lot of components outside. I'm just looking if there are any other questions. I think we're okay, and we're just a little bit past the hour. So what I'd like to say is thank you very much for attending. We hope you have seen a side of how to promote EIDAS within for your members and within the sectors that you're involved in. As I said, it's not been a technical presentation this time. We have another webinar coming up on the 13th of September, where we're digging a little bit more into the technical information. That's how electronic identification EID can benefit business. That's part of the EIDAS trusted service regulations. There's trusted services and there's EID. So we're looking specifically at the EID component, electronic ID, and how that can benefit your business. The webinar is September the 13th at 1300 CET. We've got more information if you want to look at on the EU website, and you've got the information here on the screen now. And again, this presentation will be circulated and will be available for everybody to look at. So thank you very much indeed. I hope you've all found it useful, and I look forward to meeting some of you again on the 13th. Thank you very much.